Hello, and welcome to the Deep Edge podcast. In this episode, we're going to dive deep into some of the transformation going on in the telecom industry. I'm your host, Ray Mota from ACG Research. One of the topics we're going to talk about today is this whole concept about what we call telco to techco transition, which is an important aspects that we see going on in the industry, and some of the game-changing roles that network APIs will play in unlocking new revenue streams, whether it's through network as a service, security innovation, some of the use cases associated with driving that, but also some of the collaboration and strategic partnership that needs to happen in that area. And then we're going to address some of the challenges that mobile network operators will face regarding how can they monetize APIs and address it properly in a way regarding standardizations to happen across the board. And then some of the future outlook that we see going on. And we have an expert joining us who's a member of the Mobile Ecosystem Forum that's going to dive deep into some of these topics. Let's get deep into this podcast. Let's get it going. Hey, Doug, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Hi, Ray. Doing very well. Thank you very much. Suffering from a little bit of jet lag, but ready to go.
No, I know that
How about
trip
you?
from Europe and the Middle East and all that. I tell you, I miss COVID sometimes because we didn't deal with that. But after that, I forgot what jet lag was like. So hang in there. Let's get that coffee and get this going. You ready?
Well, I understand that you've been to Dubai several times. So I just did the Dubai to San Francisco, which is a 12-hour time zone offset. So it's worst case, right? You can't
Yeah, yeah.
have any fun
You
at
know, the
all. But
first time I don't know if I
coffee
told
is
you
so
this.
bad.
The first time I went to Dubai, I knew about the heat because I live in Arizona, but I didn't know about the humidity. So if you have
Yeah.
glasses, when you walk in, it just totally fogs up. So it was a different experience for sure.
Well, come back in the winter. Right now, the temperatures there are quite temperate, quite nice. So
All right, fair enough, fair enough. Now, maybe
glad to be
as
here,
we
though.
get started, what was that, Doug?
I just said I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah, good, good. Thanks for joining us. Now, maybe as we get started, if you don't mind telling our audience a little bit about you and your role, so we can get further into the discussion.
Sure, Ray. So Doug Makishima here. I am speaking to you with my MEF hat on, and MEF is, let's be clear, which MEF, because there are several out
Yes.
in terms of trade associations and forums. So this is the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, and I am an advisor and program director for the Mobile Evolution Working Group. In this working group, we focus on things like the telco APIs, which I know is a topic of today's podcast,
Yes.
mobile edge computing, and open standards, new communication standards. So that's my MEF hat, but I've been in industry for decades, more decades than care to admit. But currently, I'm working as the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer for ECOBLOX, and we're developing AI HPC data centers, modular data centers, and also GPU as a service stacks, so edge computing related products and services. And so I have quite a pretty broad background in the telco and mobile and communications industry as well. So that's why the Mobile Ecosystem Forum tapped me to run this program and focus on edge computing and telco or network APIs, as they're called.
Yeah, no, definitely a hot topic. Now, maybe, in reading more and more about them and stuff, one of the things I noticed, Doug, is that they talk about this, I guess it's a transition from telco models to telco models, right? Which is really a hot topic. But, what do you see as the driving force that's behind transitioning to this type of model of the telco model for mobile network operators?
Yeah, good question. Actually, I left one thing out about my intro of myself.
Sure.
I'm also on the Linux Foundation Sonora Project End User Council and Technical Steering Committee, which we can get into later, is one of the organizations that actually creating the standards, and not only the standards, but the implementation of these telco APIs.
Oh, okay, great. Because I work with them quite a bit. I know Arpit and the team pretty well there. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great
Excellent.
organization, and we're doing making a lot of progress, doing a lot of work for these telco APIs. But I think, I mean, I see APIs as a very transformative opportunity for telcos, especially mobile operators. Um, and yeah, you're right. This whole topic of telco to techco transition and opportunities that as they've invested heavily in and deployed now their 5G networks, how do you monetize that? How do you shift the game, change the game? And, most people still use the term service provider when they refer to these telcos and mobile operators, but in reality, most of them have become essentially data plans, right? Data pipes. And the service used to be voice, text, data, maybe in some cases carrier billing. And in some pockets around the world, they've evolved quite a bit and have undergone through digital transformation and are building super apps and going way beyond what you see as a typical telco plan. But that is definitely the exception, not the rule. Most operators today, they are simply utilities, right? Just like
Right.
your water or power, they provide your data. And it's a model that works, but this utility model is limited in terms of growth and profitability. Service provider model, where you're adding a lot more value and providing more functionality capability, leads to more monetization, but it also leads to more innovation and more
Mhm.
capability in the downstream channel, right? The enterprises and the aggregators, app developers, and ultimately the end users. The end users will benefit, whether it's enterprise business case or just personal subscribers, the range of new applications, the performance of those applications, the ease of use of those applications, and very importantly, the security and anti-fraud
Right. Right.
increases.
Yeah, and this will be good because we could dive deeper into a bunch of those topics. So maybe we can get into the part about, let's say, the network APIs, right? Because initially when I look at some of those areas, the first thing is how are these API providers, as we call them, right, are going to make money, right? What is the capability that they're going to offer related to these APIs, quality on demand, SIM swap, things related to some private 5G networks. Do you mind walking us through deeper about what these APIs in real practice as they transform their businesses?
Sure, Ray. So I think let's start from the top, right?
Hmm.
So let's define what an API is, first of
Sure.
all, application programming interface. Well, what does that really mean? It just simply means that a machine or a program can interact with another machine or program, through some sort of communication medium or interface to get things done, to do certain functions or exchange data, right? And do it in a way that can be automated. So APIs in the telco space are not new, first of all. At least 10 plus years ago, major operators launched some APIs. The problem was they weren't standardized. I remember going to CES
Mhm.
and you show up a few days or even a week before, and AT&T had their developers conference. And really, there were some IoT, some innovative things going on, but really it was about using their network APIs.
Right.
And many of them were quite interesting and enable new applications and were actually commercially deployed. But the problem is they were just AT&T, not Verizon, not Sprint, not T-Mobile. So, APIs in terms of network APIs have been around for some time. If you go back even further, like using my definition of an API, you could argue that SMS,
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
messaging
Right.
service
Yeah,
is an
yeah, that's
API.
right. Yeah,
Twilio was born
yeah.
off of being able to send these short messages to exchange data between programs and enact or affect some kind of action. Um, and of course, today we know it. Some love it, some hate it in terms of if it's spam or it's a useful one-time password or some update from your banking or credit card or your flight. But it's very cumbersome and it's kind of just a blunt instrument, right? You mentioned some of the APIs that are in development and are being rolling out now. What's interesting about these APIs is they're much more granular. The feature set is much broader as well. So, the other thing is that it starts to expose existing services in the mobile operator network. So these APIs so far, really most of them, I would say 90%, are just exposing functions, features, and information that already exists in the operator network.
Mhm.
So going from SMS, which is just one instrument, kind of one size fits all to a number, plurality of different micro functions, more granular functions, allows the developer the freedom to have a much broader range of features to work with, to innovate with. And also it's automatic. You're communicating directly with the network. So take, for example, number verify, right? Today with OTP, everyone's familiar with, you get an SMS, you click here, send an SMS, you receive the SMS, you copy paste that back into the application. This flow is cumbersome for the end user. It takes more time. It's been proven that it's not as secure as people believe.
Mhm.
So there's fraud, you're trying to prevent fraud and authenticate, but there are actually some security risks that come along with that. And this with the number verify API can be completely eliminated. So a mobile in your hand, the phone in your hand has a SIM, eSIM or physical SIM. It's already authenticated. The operator knows who you are, and it's a two-factor authentication. It's something you have, right? And that's the phone. So the API can just be used to query what phone or what number, what SIM am I talking to?
Right.
So that just happens in the background, and it takes seconds, not 2 minutes.
Right.
It's just one small example, but this is something, it's a small example, but it's a significant percentage of the so-called bulk messaging that happens with SMS today.
Yeah, no, I think this is good because I think that was one of the parts that I think you've addressed is regarding security and fraud prevention, right? About the multi-factor authentication, the enhanced fraud prevention, and connected to some of these APIs. And so it was a good definition. Now, is there a play when we look at emerging areas for mobile network operators for network as a service? Is that a potential new TAM or new revenue stream in your experience there for them?
Yes, absolutely. Today, again, the services are what? I mean, it's data, voice, and then SMS. And SMS, it's not dead. People still send texts, but today most people are either sending iMessages or WhatsApp or WeChat or some other over-the-top messaging service, right? And in terms of monetizing SMS, the business messaging, overwhelming majority is still bulk messaging, but you have other messaging for IoT, you have advertising and content, other uses of SMS. But all of these things, I would say most of these things can be done with APIs in a much less cumbersome manner, much more secure manner, and can be broken out in a much more granular fashion. So the monetization opportunities increase. And again, the broader base of functionality leads to more innovation and increases or improves user experience, increases the applications that you can build and imagine. I think, in terms of network as a service, I mean, this is what the concept of network as a service, as I mentioned before, is just exposing the networks, the operator's network as a service externally. And today, the network is just basically used as the core network to run this data and SMS and voice services for you. But there are functions of the network, such as number verify, SIM swap, true location. These are things the operator network already knows. That it's information it already has and uses, but there's no way to access it externally, right? So taken to the extreme, you could say, okay, well, I could offer all of these micro functions, these granular functions, or I can offer the entire network as a service. So if you take it to the extreme, through a number of APIs, you can actually offer the entire network as a service. Well, what is that? That's private 5G. That's network slicing, right? Or you can say, look, I have compute resources in my core network, or I can stand up compute nodes by base station controllers, geographically dispersed, and call that edge networking, right? Telco edge networking. And you access that how? Through APIs. So APIs really just enable you to offer NaaS, to offer network as a service. And it can be as simple as, what is this number that I'm currently talking to? The app on the phone is talking to my backend service. I just want to know, is this really this phone number? And today you do it with a one-time password through SMS, right? Or an authenticator app. But you can just simply go to the network and say, network, tell me who this is, and verify that number. And then you can do some other sophisticated layer functions on like SIM swap. And was this SIM swap recently? Why? Because there's a well-known SIM swap attack. And so if you imagine that you could set a window, let's say if the SIM has been swapped within the last, I don't know, 1 day or 1 week, then go through a higher level, more rigorous level of authentication. That would cut down a significant amount, not all, but in a very, very high, let's say 90s percentile of these SIM swap attacks. So, you can just imagine there are all these functions in the network that are available that are useful for developers, for enterprises, for app services that can again increase functionality, innovation, but also security and the improved user experience to make things a lot more seamless and automatic and easy for subscribers. So that's definitely one of the major advantages of network as a service and these APIs. Now, as I mentioned in my earlier example with AT&T, the problem in the past with APIs has been a single operator model. So these operators are proprietary. Now, what the GSMA has done, they 2 years ago, actually almost to the date, we're right on Mobile Congress in Barcelona next week, right? Announced the Open Gateway initiative. And that's basically a framework for network as a service on these APIs. Now, GSMA is developing some of the standards, as they are also a standards development organization on their own, but they have worked with both TM Forum and Linux Foundation Chimera project to basically implement this framework. And so actual standardization, coding, implementation is coming from these two and other organizations. So what's changed is that now there's an industry standard, and one of the things that really hurts mobile operators is they compete with one another in the same region, in the same country. Whereas today, if I'm an app developer and I stand up a server in my garage, immediately connected to the internet, immediately it's ubiquitous. It's available anywhere in the world, unless there's some kind of a firewall, right? And it's instantly accessible by anybody who has a mobile device. So standardization allows the mobile operators to implement these APIs and they don't have to implement them all at the same time. But what we found through our research, through the Mobile Ecosystem Forum research and our members participating in Mobile Evolution, that you don't need to implement 20 or 30 APIs. You just need to have one useful one, but it has to be countrywide or region-wide. And there are several examples of where this is rolled out, and it's been very successful, and we build from that single API. But the key thing is ubiquity, reach, broad reach, or universal reach.
Yeah, no, I think you did a good job, because one of the things I see, Doug, is making that transition from being kind of like a data pipe, right, to a technology-driven model brings some challenges in that standardization and approach. I think you did a brilliant job of saying, here's how to overcome, those challenges. But I think one of the key parts I want to just go into that part is, one person can't do this alone, right? There needs to be some joint ventures, some partnerships, to collaborate and to be able to monetize that. I mean, what do you see as promising in the areas of collaboration and mobile ecosystems and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, it takes an ecosystem.
Right.
I mean, the mobile operators left to their own devices, they are competitors, so they will compete with one another.
Right.
So the GSMA as a trade association and standards body and the Mobile Ecosystem Forum try to foster that competition, but at the same time create a kind of a level playing field through standardization and initiatives that benefit everybody. So it grows pie or increases functionality and monetization opportunities for everybody. But it turns out that it can't be only just the mobile operators, right? It's an entire ecosystem. So there are many vendors and enterprises and app developers, and even in the world of SMS, right? We have aggregators that help interconnect the whole fabric of all of these operators together. I mean, today you can send an SMS to anybody and has a phone number, a mobile phone, right? Well, it wasn't like that in the early days. And now if I'm an enterprise and I want to send an advertisement, or even just, bulk messaging, one-time passwords or
Mhm.
notifications, um, before I would have to send to every single operator because my customers are subscribers on different networks, right? So if you
Right.
can imagine this mesh, this nightmarish mesh of complexity. So the aggregators play a role, and they still do today with SMS, and they're moving to RCS, and they're moving to APIs as well. And so what's happening though is, and that's very useful and helpful, and it's happening. But if you think about these APIs, still as a developer, I would have to code, even though it's standardized, there's a portal, there's some way to access the API onboarding and then utilize the APIs for each and every operator, right? And as soon as you get beyond a single country with 2 to 4 operators, the fan out, the mesh, becomes just onerous. And so now we're seeing some hubs
Mm.
and some ventures come about. The first one, large one, was the Bridge Alliance Exchange, which was announced I think early summer last year. And the Bridge Alliance is the largest mobile operator alliance in Asia, counting over 1 billion subscribers. And then shortly after, a couple months later, Ericsson announced a joint venture with some leading mobile operators, and now that's been named Aduna. So that is both of these are hubs, and what they aim to do is provide a common platform for the aggregators to connect to, which then allows the enterprises and app developers to do what they're doing today with SMS. Is connect to one aggregator and be able to have that reach that I mentioned earlier, to hit all of their customers in a given region. And not only are they working out the technical aspects, but they're working out the economics, right? The
Right.
financial, the charging models that can all be unified. So you just have one business model instead of having to negotiate with every single operator and have unknown costs.
Perfect. Yeah. Now maybe we can close with is Doug. I mean, where do you see the industry going? I mean, where should some of these industry players focus their efforts to remain competitive and innovative at the same time?
Well, I think depending on how you count it, right? We're 20 years in or 10 years in or 2 years in. Um, with anything to do with carriers, with mobile operators and fixed line operators, things do take time.
Mhm.
Good news is that what we're doing here with network as a service is we're expressing features and functions that already exist in the network. So yeah, there are some technical things to work out, and the company's also stepping in to help operators express these functions that already exist. And by
Right.
the way, it's not just features and functions, there's data too.
Right.
Marketing, very valuable marketing and business data that the operator has. Now, of course, this raises privacy concerns, but there are ways to anonymize all of this data, and then the resulting return values from the API, marketing API, is nothing about the customer data at all in terms of individual piece of
Mhm.
information. It's just how many subscribers are in my retail locations and these 5 retail locations, so I can push some ad to them and be much more targeted, right?
Right.
So you can get that kind of information as well. And you can even control the network. So there's one API, quality of service on demand, right? That allows, it's kind of a push to boost button where
Okay.
I'm just boarding my flight. I need to download the latest series from Netflix, and
Mhm.
I just need to get my traffic a
Yeah.
boost. So you're actually, think about it, through an API, you're controlling the
I've done that
operation.
many times, so I'm laughing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's an interesting concept to think about. You're actually
Yeah.
controlling the operator's network through an API.
Right.
But anyway, so to answer your question, I mean, um, sky's the limit here. And
Mhm.
I think, again, with the assistance of GSMA and Chimera and TM Forum and then mobile ecosystem bringing together all the elements of the ecosystem to work in a coordinated fashion, I think it's possible. I think this digital transformation, this transformation from a telco to techco is definitely in the cards, and it's possible and is underway. Uh, Time will tell, but I'm very encouraged. Again, I'm running this interest group and working group in the mobile ecosystem forum, and our members are active. They're deploying. We're having very cross industry, very productive dialogue.
Mhm.
And we have Mobile World Congress coming up just in a week. So we'll
Right.
see a lot more progress and announcements coming forth. So yeah,
Excellent.
I think I'm optimistic this time around for
Good, good. That's good because I always tell people I tend to be a technology optimist also. So I appreciate you joining, Doug. Thanks. Hopefully,
my
I'll get
pleasure,
to
Ray.
see you in Spain and get some rest. And with Doug, this is Ray Mota. Thanks for joining this edition of the podcast.
Thank you, Ray.